Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, according to the New York Times, this just in, he seems to have reached a deal with the Department of Justice. He reportedly just agreed to plead guilty to one count of retaining classified documents when preparing his memoirs while he was working for the Trump administration. According to the Times, Bolton will go before a judge later this month and will probably just have to pay a fine. He could theoretically still face 5 years in prison. Bolton left the Trump White House in 2019. He quickly became Trump's enemy by calling Trump stupid and ill-prepared. Bolton is a hawk. He championed both the war in Iraq and on Iran, and I was hoping he would be going to prison. Pete Hegseth has a new hire over at the Pentagon. We have a new kid working inside the Special Operations and Low Intensity Conflict Office inside the Pentagon. They're tasked with preventing and fighting terrorism, and it's this guy, Elias Irizarry. You can see him right here on January 1st. After he stormed the Capitol, here he is taking a break from the insurrection, lounging around inside one of the congressional conference rooms before going back out there and destroying our democracy. He's just one of nearly 1,600 January 6ers Trump pardoned. Just one of 1,600 January 6ers Trump is trying to find work for or just pay reparations to them for their unfair prosecution by the Biden Justice Department. Testifying before the House Ways and Means Committee, a visibly shaken Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent screamed slanderous after California House Democrat Linda Sanchez called this the most corrupt Treasury Department in American history. Sanchez made the accusation after Scott Bessent refused to comment on a deal struck between the Justice Department and Donald Trump, a deal to end all previous IRS audits, not just of Donald Trump, but his children, his entire family, and close friends. Bessent, Treasury Secretary, is in charge of the IRS, and he refused to answer any questions. I'm going to talk about Bessent in a little while and how he likes to throw down. There's more reports of his violent streak. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is attempting to attach to a Homeland Security Appropriations bill an amendment that would permanently ban Donald Trump from setting up that $1.8 billion slush fund as part of this deal that Trump struck with himself, essentially. 3 Republican senators running for re-election voted in favor of Schumer's amendment today, but it failed to pass. Schumer's going to try again, but it failed to pass. It does show you, however, how radioactive Donald Trump has become. It shows you 3 Senate seats that are very much in play for Democrats heading into November. The 3 Republicans who voted to ban Trump's reparations slush fund for January 6ers, those 3 senators who joined Chuck Schumer today are Senator Susan Collins of Maine, Senator John Husted of Ohio, and Dan Sullivan of Alaska. All 3 of them are running for re-election, and all 3 of them not doing well in the polls. So, kind of interesting. Democrats need to flip 4 seats to take control of the Senate. A lot of people, up until recently, thought the Senate was out of reach. This whole redistricting stuff is about the House of Representatives, but now not only are Maine, Ohio, and Alaska in play, Tallarico, in Texas. Cooper in North Carolina, also very much in play. So we will see. Pay attention to Susan Collins in Maine. They're trying to destroy Plattner right now. The New York Times out with another expose about how emotionally wrenching it is to date Plattner. I think the more you come after Plattner, the more Maine voters are going to turn away from Collins and go for Plattner. We'll see. John Husted of Ohio in trouble. Dan Sullivan, Alaska, also in trouble. Okay, the Wall Street Journal reporting that despite acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's promise this week that the $1.8 billion weaponization slush fund is now dead, the Justice Department is pursuing another avenue to compensate January 6ers or anyone else claiming to have been unfairly targeted by the Justice Department under Joe Biden. According to the Wall Street Journal, Justice Department is drawing up plans to compensate these so-called victims of the Biden Justice Department. They're going to compensate them through an uncapped source of money made available to the Justice Department under a 1946 law entitled the Federal Tort Claims Act. They're going to say that to pay the January 6ers or anybody else who thinks they were victimized by Joe Biden's Justice Department, the plan now is to pay them out of the general budget, and that is uncapped according to the Federal Tort Claims Act. According to the Journal, one of the top lawyers representing many of these January 6ers who are claiming the Biden Justice Department unfairly targeted them for simply trying to overthrow the government of the United States. One of the big defenders of these January 6ers is a Missouri-based personal injury lawyer named Mark McCloskey. I read that this afternoon. I read the name personal injury lawyer from Missouri, Mark McCloskey, and I thought, why does he sound so familiar? I looked him up, and it's this guy. It's the same Mark McCloskey who pointed his AR-15 at Black Lives Matter protesters marching towards the mayor of St. Louis's home, and he didn't like them on the street, so he waved his AR-15 and began pointing his assault weapon. His wife pointed her little pistol at Black Lives Matter protesters. He and his wife were charged with a felony. They pled down to a misdemeanor. That was in June of 2020, at the height of the Black Lives Matter protests. June of 2020, by August of that year, Donald Trump had already asked Mark McCloskey to speak at the Republican convention. What was Mark McCloskey's qualification to speak at the Republican convention? He pointed his AR-15 at Black Lives Matter protesters. That's his qualification. Well, the Department of Homeland Security's new chief is Mark Wayne Mullen, and he grew very frustrated today when he was testifying before the House Homeland Security Committee. He ended up screaming, quote, "That is a flat-out lie," after New York Democrat Tim Kennedy cited reams of evidence proving that Mark Wayne Mullen is no different from Kristi Noem and is continuing her policy of denying ICE detainees food, water, sanitation, and necessary medical care. So far, 20 people have died in ICE custody this year, which this year isn't even half over. Last year, 33 died in ICE custody. That's the highest ever for ICE. Obviously, for 2026, unless something is done. We're on track to break that record. This is Mark Wayne Mullen. That is Mark Wayne Mullen. That is him standing on a stool during his debate for Senate. That's Mark Wayne Mullen. He's got a little Greg Bovino thing going on. Kind of reminds me of Mark McCloskey, the guy representing the January Sixers. See what they have in common here? See what Greg Bovino, Mark McCloskey, and Mark Wayne Mullen have in common? What do they all have in common? They're douchebags. Here is Mark Wayne Mullen 2 years ago threatening to punch Sean O'Brien, the leader of the Teamsters, who ended up not endorsing Kamala Harris because he said she had an attitude. He's a POS. And here is Mark Wayne Mullen on Halloween going as a douchebag. I'm sorry, that's not a costume. Well, it is, but it's just not a Halloween costume. Jesus. Where are we? Candace Owens appearing on Russian state television yesterday said she's hoping Tucker Carlson runs for president in 2028. Owens was attending Moscow's version of a Davos summit, which was attended by entrepreneurs like former movie star, martial arts expert Steven Seagal, and Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate showed up for Vladimir Putin's Davos. Andrew Tate is currently on trial in Romania and England, charged with human trafficking. Big Trump supporter. Candace Owens banned from New Zealand and Australia because of her Holocaust denials. She refuses to say Dr. Joseph Mengele's experiments on inmates at Auschwitz actually happened. She thinks Israel was behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk. She defended Kanye West's pro-Hitler anti-Semitic tweets. And she repeatedly claims Hollywood is controlled by the Jews. Well, she was interviewed in Moscow for Russian television yesterday by former CNN anchor Rick Sanchez. Remember Rick Sanchez? Remember him? Well, he lives in Moscow these days, working full-time for Russian television. Back in 2010, Sanchez was fired from CNN after he gave an interview saying Jews control the media. Now he's living in Moscow, working for Putin, talking with Candace Owens. And I'm sure Candace Owens and Rick Sanchez are having a field day with news that Scott Pelley just got fired from 60 Minutes after challenging the qualifications of 60 Minutes' new executive producer, Nick Bilton. During an all-hands-on-deck staff meeting for 60 Minutes, Scott Pelley questioned Bilton's qualifications to run 60 Minutes and then, in front of everybody, accused the new head of CBS News, Barry Weiss, a devout Zionist. He accused her of attempting to murder 60 Minutes. In the past 2 weeks, Barry Weiss fired 2 other 60 Minutes correspondents because they stood up to her after she tried to tone down an expose on that El Salvadoran torture chamber ICE is sending detainees, including Abrego Garcia. Remember, Abrego Garcia was accidentally rounded up by ICE. Garcia has since made it back to the United States, and Barry Weiss took her sweet time on allowing 60 Minutes to do their expose on the El Salvadoran torture chamber. Nick Bilton was hired to run 60 Minutes. Like Barry Weiss, he has no background in broadcast journalism, and Barry Weiss is continuing to come under attack for her conservative, pro-Israeli leanings, as well as her intent to further the corporate interests of this turd, David Ellison, the new owner of CBS News, and he's soon to be the owner of CNN. David Ellison, turd, is the son of turd billionaire Larry Ellison, who made billions and billions of dollars through Oracle software. And this is why the turd, David Ellison, will fail. He's just the son of. He's a Nepo billionaire. And he's going to fail and bring everyone down with him. He's already destroyed The Late Show. Got the number one show on late night television. This turd, David Ellison, destroyed it, even though it was making money. And I don't have time to go over it, but I can show you that it was making a lot of money, but he caved to pressure from Donald Trump because he's a cowardly turd who needs his father's money to move ahead in life. And so they destroyed the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and now they're destroying 60 Minutes. Daily Beast, by the way, is reporting CBS Late Night used to be the number one show in its time slot up until last week when they got rid of Colbert. The new host, Byron Allen, and his show Comics Unleashed is scoring only 628,000 viewers. That is a 65% drop in probably 7 days since Colbert left. In the coveted 18 to 49 demo, he's only got 82,000 viewers. Good work, turd. David Ellison spending your father's billions. You're not a man, David Ellison. You're not a real man. Anybody who is the son of a billionaire and needs his father's billions to justify his existence is not a man. You're a turd, David Ellison. And so are you, Barry Weiss. Wednesday morning, Ukrainian drones struck an oil refinery and a naval base inside the Russian city of St. Petersburg. It forced the local airport to close for 5 hours. Last week, British intelligence estimated that nearly 500,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in battle since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Remember that meeting in the Oval Office between Trump and Zelensky last year? Remember Trump was saying, you don't have the cards, Putin does? This is the first time since World War II that St. Petersburg and Moscow have come under attack by missiles. The Economist out with a new poll showing twice as many people believe Donald Trump sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll as those who don't believe he sexually assaulted her. Here's the question they were asked. E. Jean Carroll has accused Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her in the 1990s. Trump has denied Carroll's accusation. Who do you think is telling the truth? 46% believe E. Jean Carroll, 27% believe Donald Trump. 48% of Americans approve of the jury's decision ordering Trump to pay E. Jean Carroll close to $90 million in damages. Only 30% disapprove of the unanimous jury verdict, which said Donald Trump has to pay her close to $90 million. He has lost appeal after appeal. Now it's before the Supreme Court. Now it's before the Supreme Court. He's claiming that when she made the accusation he was president, she made the accusation in 2019, yeah, so he has immunity. Well, you don't have immunity from civil prosecution for anything you did. Fitzgerald versus Nixon says a sitting president does not have immunity from civil lawsuits for anything he did as president as long as it wasn't an official act. And I've gone over Article 2 of the Constitution. Nothing in it says the official act of president is defaming a woman he sexually assaulted. It's not in the Constitution. But he's got donors' money to spend on legal fees. I don't know if the Supreme Court is going to hear his appeal, which is why last week CNN reporting that Todd Blanche's Department of Justice opened up a criminal investigation looking into allegations that E. Jean Carroll perjured herself during a 2022 deposition when she testified that her legal fees were not paid by any outside groups. It was later learned that billionaire Reid Hoffman had been picking up some of the tab for her lawyers, and Carroll said she was under the impression her lawyers were working on a contingency basis, would only get paid if she won. She was not a party to that deal with Reid Hoffman. And this is what the FBI is focusing on. Her perjuring herself, and she really didn't, because she said she wasn't paying attention to where the money was coming from. She just assumed Roberta Kaplan, her lawyer, wasn't getting any money. By the way, Roberta Kaplan, horrible human being. I mean, you need horrible people to defend you, but turns out E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, who did a great job prosecuting Donald Trump, had to leave her job at a law firm because she was abusive, allegedly, like really abusive towards her employees. So apparently, E. Jean Carroll hired a monster who won the case. And as long as you're talking about legal fees, had Donald Trump not won in 2024, Jack Smith would have prosecuted him for wire fraud, because all of Donald Trump's legal fees still are being paid by people who donated to his Save America Super PAC. He was telling them, donate to my Super PAC and we will investigate voter fraud. And he used all the money to pay his lawyers. We learned this week that Todd Blanche, our acting attorney general, was paid $10 million in 2024 from the Save America Super PAC to defend Donald Trump in that Manhattan criminal trial, which Trump lost, and that's why he's now a convicted felon. That $10 million that Todd Blanche got from the Save America PAC, that's wire fraud, because people donated to that Save America PAC under the false pretense that voter fraud was going to be investigated. That went to lawyers and Melania's stylist. This is the mop-up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Another platform has just shut me down. It's amazing. I don't want to get into it, but I've just, it's like, wow, I'm glad I'm paranoid. But another platform is, it's just, I'm not alone. So this is what's going on. So anyway, the House Ethics Committee now investigating Democrat Jimmy Gomez, who represents California's solidly blue 34th Congressional District. This after reports surfaced he may have engaged in inappropriate relations with a congressional staffer. That's Jimmy Gomez. According to the Washington Post, Gomez was spotted kissing this woman 2 years ago at a party thrown by now disgraced California House Democrat Eric Swalwell, who was forced to resign earlier this year amid rape accusations. Let's call it what it is. These are accusations of rape, not sexual assault or sexual abuse. He's accused of rape. Until 2 months ago, Eric Swalwell was considered the front runner in Tuesday's primary for governor. The woman that Congressman Jimmy Gomez is accused of making out with was Eric Swalwell's former chief of staff, Yardena Wolf. His chief of staff. Just curious, did she know about Eric Swalwell's alleged rapes? Well, this is exciting. This is, what do I look forward to every day? Well, the California primaries were Tuesday. The results are just trickling in. And look at this. The California governor's race. Somebody was playing with After Effects. Somebody's wasting time playing with After Effects. So the results from California's primary are trickling in. Tom Steyer, who was running as the billionaire who could save us all, he ran. He said to California, "I can save you." And California voters apparently said, "Thanks, but we're good." It looks like despite pouring $220 million of his own money into the most expensive race for governor in California history, Steyer didn't qualify for the November ballot, coming in third behind Democrat Xavier Becerra and Republican Steve Hilton in Tuesday's jungle primary. That was because he's a multi-billionaire. He has yet to concede. He's waiting till every ballot has been counted. And this is how lost our nation is. He's a Democrat. Steyer ran as the billionaire who was going to save us from feudalism. He was promising single-payer medical care for the state of California and a wealth tax on billionaires. I wanted Katie Porter to win. She didn't. She came in, I think she got 6% of the vote. This is how bad things are. It's the Stockholm Syndrome. People like me were beginning to think, I don't know, maybe Tom Steyer's a good guy after all. No, he's a turd. He's a billionaire. Can't have any more billionaires. Every billionaire, they say every billionaire is a policy failure. No. Every billionaire is a crime. Every billionaire is a crime against our climate, against our democracy, and a crime against our economy. Actual crimes. Every billionaire should be prosecuted. There's always a crime behind $1 billion. I promise you. Well, let's get back to some exciting after effects that I should have been reading, but instead, look at this. That's the state of California. Isn't that a California's governor's race? Because you do this, David, you make something like that, and people are going to love you. It's not your complete and utter lack of talent. It's that you haven't mastered After Effects, David. All right, so results from that jungle primary are trickling in. It's not official, but it's starting to look like November's runoff for governor will be between Biden's former Secretary of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra, and Republican Fox contributor Steve Hilton, who has never held elective office before. These are jungle primaries, meaning it's just one ballot, and the top two advance to the ballot on Election Day. Regardless of party, theoretically, you could have two Democrats or two Republicans running against each other. An argument could be made if it's Becerra versus Steve Hilton, you have two Republicans running against each other. I'm rooting for Xavier Becerra, but he's not for Medicare for all. He's not for Medicare for all. Now, because so many Democrats just ran in this jungle primary, including billionaire and turd Tom Steyer, as well as former Congresswoman Katie Porter, who should have won. I mean, she was the most qualified, the best. She should have been the one. But it's going to come down probably to Hilton and Becerra. And what we saw, the Democratic Party's vote was diluted, and you had a more concentrated vote for Steve Hilton. And he's in first place. It looks like he's in first place. That's more impressive than it actually is. He's leading Becerra, I think, by 2 percentage points? But he doesn't stand a chance come Election Day, because in a deep blue state like California, eventually the Democrats will rally around the most probable nominee. That would be Xavier Becerra, the son of Mexican immigrants. He served as a congressman and state attorney general before joining Joe Biden's cabinet as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Not thrilled about Becerra. It should have been Katie Porter. And the best do not rise to the top here in the United States of America, which is why I was expecting to be very successful. I realized you don't have to be the best. In fact, the worst rise to the top. That was my plan. I thought, I suck. I can do this. I suck. Well, SpaceX, Elon Musk's privately held company, which makes rockets for NASA, as well as satellites for the United States, for multinational corporations and countries around the world. SpaceX is about to become a publicly traded stock. We think it's going to be on June 11th. It's expected to open at roughly $135 a share, giving it a nearly $2 trillion market valuation from the start. The Wall Street Journal reporting this morning that after SpaceX launches its IPO next week, Elon Musk's stake in that company, coupled with his stake in Tesla, will put him on track towards becoming the world's first trillionaire. Trillionaire. This is the Wall Street Journal projecting that once SpaceX stocks begins trading, Musk's wealth, at least the first day that SpaceX is being traded, Musk's wealth will approach $970 billion. Now, that's subject to market fluctuation. It's pretty much entirely on paper. But here we are. Elon Musk, a white supremacist, worth close to $1 trillion. Musk also owns Neuralink, which is in the forefront of brain-computer interface technology. What is brain-computer interface technology? Turning you into a cyborg, making you part human and part machine. It's already happening. A pacemaker for your heart, a cochlear implant for your, is it pronounced cochlear? What did Rush Limbaugh have? A cochlear implant to help you hear? Prosthetic limbs that can now move because your mind tells them to. Those are current examples of humans becoming cyborgs, half human, half machine. And Musk's goal is to create what they call the singularity, where man and machine become indistinguishable, where humans are one with the vast network of data centers fueling AI. We're going to be tapped in. Well, some of us who swallow the chip will become one with AI and no longer human. Now, this is not Ray Bradbury. This is not Isaac Asimov. This is not Philip Dick. This is the truth. There are babies who are being born right now whose parents, in the not too distant future, will be told that their child must swallow the chip or they will be left behind. They will be told the chip will be the key to survival. That is what parents are going to be told. Without the chip, without a neural link to AI, your child won't be able to compete in today's marketplace. So it's no coincidence that the people so attracted to Elon Musk are anti-vaxxers. They know a world is coming. We're just a couple of years away, maybe 2 or 3 years, where parents are going to be told your child needs to evolve or die. Eat the chip, or your child will go the way of the Neanderthals. This is the plan. And people who are close followers of Elon Musk are worried about this. Neuralink, he's planting chips inside people's brains right now. Some of the stuff is successful at fighting Parkinson's, but with it comes the end of humanity as we know it. The Pope is talking about this. This is not me trying to wake you up, and this is going to be ho-hum conversation in about 6 months. We're all going to be, oh my God, this is... See, now here, forget the fact that our spirit, our soul, is going to be consumed by the corporations. Musk is a white supremacist from South Africa. He believes social hierarchies are a natural phenomenon. He believes some people are better than others, and it's always been that way and will remain so. And he is now being forced to think about creating new social hierarchies where the real rulers are those with the super chip, making them at one with the super machine, and the ruled, you and me, well, we're the hybrids. We're the half machine, half human. We're the cyborgs. Basic humans, baby boomers, well, we're just going to die off. We had our chance. We blew it. And now the generations coming up will swallow the chip, and humanity, as we know it, will no longer exist. It's a good thing I don't have sponsors. Who would want to advertise on this show? Well, look, it's not Blade Runner. It's not the Terminator. This is happening. The Pope is saying, knock it off, Bernie. The Pope, Bernie, same difference. There's a war being waged, not just on humanity, but what makes us human. And the world's first trillionaire, white supremacist, Elon Musk, he is a technocrat. His grandfather was a technocrat, Nazi sympathizer, not allowed into the United States during World War II. His grandfather moved to South Africa while living in Canada. He read about apartheid and said, wow, sign me up. And his grandfather, that's how Elon Musk ended up in South Africa. His Canadian grandfather read about apartheid and said, how can I not be a part of this? So he was a white supremacist technocrat. Obviously, the grandson is identical. And SpaceX, Neuralink, Musk believes humanity and the planet as we know it is doomed because of him. And he's trying to create a new species that can live and work on the moon and Mars. You know, I love space exploration, but not if it costs me humanity. They are, the next step is planting AI chips inside our skulls and creating a master race of people with infinite computing power. I suggest you play with AI. You can go online. Some of you do it, some of you don't. It's free. You can check out all these, check out Grok, check out Elon Musk's Grok, play with it, see what it can do now for free. You can bump up to a paid version, see what the free version can do already. These data centers are creating the next step in evolution by overheating the planet and then being forced to create a new life form that is probably silicon-based, not carbon-based, and it can survive anywhere, the moon, Mars, deep space, or whatever becomes of planet Earth. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. You know what's going on. There's another platform that is not shutting me down, but has admitted that it is throttling me back. It's a real thing. This is not paranoia. Well, it's partly paranoia. So please subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. Please share, like, so I remain in your algorithm. I cannot do this show without the listeners. And by the way, it is summer, or summer's about, 17 days away. This is an audio podcast. There's nothing ever you get your audio and go for a walk, go outside, listen to the show as an audio podcast. It's commercial free. Now, on some platforms, they run ads. I don't know. I have no say. It's just random, which erectile dysfunction ad they run during my show. Or there's one, a woman complaining that she can't poop. Have you seen that ad? I mean, some of these ads they run, anyway. But as an audio podcast, this show is and always has been commercial free. It's just free. And sign up for my newsletter. Go to davidfeldmanshow.com so I can stay in touch with you as it gets more difficult to be in touch with you because of turds like Barry Weiss and David Ellison, who is not a man. Not a man. His father is Larry Ellison, billionaire from Oracle. His son is not a man. If your father's a billionaire and you have to spend his billions to buy Paramount and CNN because you want to be in the movie and news business, but can't do it on your own, you're a worthless turd, David Ellison, and half a man. Half a man. And I would tell that to his face. I would say that right to his face. I think I would at this point in my life. I think at this point, where am I? Okay. The House of Representatives on Wednesday approved a war powers resolution ordering Donald Trump to end the fighting with Iran. Now, this is huge, and it's also nothing. It's political and symbolic. It's not binding. But it's huge, especially since Donald Trump called the 4 Republicans who voted to end the war in Iran, he called them guilty of treason. That's why it's huge. It's part of a process. I'm going to explain what the process is. The resolution passed in the House 215 to 2008, and it was blocked by Mike Johnson. He didn't want the vote. They released it through a discharge petition. We're getting more and more discharge petitions signed and implemented than at any time in modern American history. They're finding workarounds when it comes to Mike Johnson trying to control what gets voted on. So 215 to 208 passed. Bring the troops home. End the fighting in Iran. 4 Republicans, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Tom Barrett of Michigan, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, and Warren Davidson of Ohio joined the Democrats. It heads to the Senate, where it will die. It has to die. I'm going to explain to you why. But it's still important. But it's going to die in the Senate. This is window dressing. And ending an American war starts with window dressing. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was testifying up on Capitol Hill all week. He was before the House Ways and Means Committee today, and he refused to call the war with Iran a war. Connecticut House Democrat John Larson kept asking our Treasury Secretary if America was in fact at war with Iran, because Bessent kept calling it a conflict. Bessent refused to call it a war. Well, had we won the war in Iran, Bessent would be calling it a war. Instead, it's an excursion. That's what Trump is calling it, an excursion, a detour. It's a war that we're not winning. Everyone knows that, and Trump can't call it a war because 60 days have passed and the War Powers Resolution is supposed to kick in. But the War Powers Resolution was supposed to kick in a month ago. The War Powers Resolution, the War Powers Act, is, and people are going to get upset when I tell you this, it's meaningless. It's window dressing. You want to end a war, you defund it. The only way Congress can end a war is to stop paying for it. So let me explain to you why you're being misled about the War Powers Act, which was passed in 1973. And it really annoys me that the media they don't tell you that the War Powers Act of 1973 is not only toothless, it's meaningless. It's window dressing. And somebody should tell the American people that, because this is why we have these forever wars. The War Powers Act of 1973 is useless. You end a war by not funding it. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq were, you know what kept those wars going? War supplementals. Every year and a half, Congress would pass a supplemental to fund the war. I've been over this. I don't want to get angry at Democrats, at Nancy Pelosi, for when she became Speaker, she approved those war supplementals for Iraq, even though she voted against the war authorization. I've been over this. I don't want to talk about that. Okay? So, according to the War Powers Act passed in 1973, the Senate now has until the middle of June to approve the same resolution that just got passed in the House on end the fighting in Iran. That was the resolution that got passed by the House of Representatives invoking the War Powers Act. It's huge, but the War Powers Act is meaningless because it can't pass in the Senate. They won't allow it to pass in the Senate. If the Senate voted yes, it can't be filibustered. It's a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. According to the War Powers Act of 1973, that resolution, if passed in both the House and the Senate, automatically becomes the law. The president, according to the War Powers Act of 1973, must then end the war in Iran, which he says is not a war. The president can't veto it because it's what they call a concurrent resolution. So this is really important, and this is why they don't talk about this on any other show, because it takes a while to explain. The media rather have you stay stupid and think the War Powers Act of 1973 is still in effect. It's not. But nobody has the time to explain this to you. And because they don't have the time, nobody knows how to stop a war. Okay. There are two types of bills that get passed in Congress. This is in order to understand this, you need to know the difference between a joint resolution and a concurrent resolution. If you understand the difference between a joint resolution and a concurrent resolution, then you'll understand why the War Powers Act of 1973 is meaningless. Okay. A joint resolution is a bill that needs a president's signature or a 2/3 majority in both houses of Congress to override the president's veto. If a president doesn't sign a bill or a joint resolution, that's a veto, and you need a 2/3 supermajority in both houses of Congress to override the president's veto. That's a joint resolution. A concurrent resolution doesn't involve the president. It's concurrent between the House of Representatives and the Senate. It has nothing to do with the executive branch. It's a bill that goes into effect after getting passed in the House and the Senate. That's what a concurrent resolution is. And I'm sorry, I know this is boring. I think this is fascinating, but I know most people are bored by this. You got to know the difference between a joint resolution and a concurrent resolution. So the War Powers Act of 1973 was a joint resolution. It was signed into law. No, it wasn't signed into law. It was vetoed by Nixon, and then it got overridden by a 2/3 supermajority in the House and the Senate. That is a joint resolution. Now, the War Powers Act of 1973, which was a joint resolution, gave Congress the power to end a war through a concurrent resolution, meaning Congress doesn't require a presidential signature to end the war. A concurrent legislation is not subject to a presidential veto. It's the House and the Senate passing a concurrent resolution saying, end the war now. And it doesn't go before the president for a signature. That's what a concurrent resolution is. A lot of power given to the legislative branch through a concurrent resolution. That is why in 1983, the Supreme Court pretty much said concurrent resolutions that serve as a check on the president, they are unconstitutional. The court said, essentially, that Congress can only pass concurrent resolutions that are legally binding, that concurrent resolutions are only legally binding when it involves the day-to-day operations of the legislative branch and only the legislative branch. Any concurrent resolution, the court said, that affects the president or the courts is not legally binding. You need a joint, not a concurrent. You need a joint resolution. If you're going to pass a bill that affects the courts or the president, you need a joint resolution, and a joint resolution requires either a president's signature, or if he doesn't sign it and vetoes it, then you need a 2/3 supermajority in both the House and Senate to override a presidential veto. So, to help you remember this, because it's important, because stopping wars is important, the War Powers Act of 1973 was a joint resolution, meaning Congress and the Senate passed a bill. They gave it to President Nixon. He vetoed it. They took it back and gave they got a supermajority, 2/3 in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. They overrode Nixon's veto. It became the law. That's a joint resolution. Inside that War Powers Act of 1973 is a provision for a concurrent resolution. In that bill, they gave Congress the power to end a war through a concurrent resolution, meaning it doesn't go before the president. It's just the House and the Senate voting to end a war, simple thumbs up or thumbs down, can't be filibustered, okay? So, right now, Congress, and this is what you're going to be hearing about for the next month, Congress is pretending they have the authority to end a war through this provision in the War Powers Act, the concurrent resolution, but they don't, and they know they don't. This is a kabuki dance. The Supreme Court hasn't officially stripped the War Powers Act. They haven't overturned it because why? It's never been tested. It's never been before the Supreme Court. Deep in the bowels of Congress, they know the court would rule against any concurrent resolution ordering the president to end a war. So the House on Wednesday passed a resolution to end the war in Iran. All it needs now is to go to the Senate and get a simple majority, and that is a concurrent resolution that, according to the War Powers Act in 1974, means the war in Iran is officially over. But that will be overturned by the Supreme Court. Everyone knows it would be overturned by the Supreme Court. So Congress has kept the War Powers Act in place, the power to use a concurrent resolution to end a war. They've kept it in place by never, ever passing a concurrent resolution to end a war. That's why the Senate is never going to pass this resolution. As long as both houses of Congress never pass the concurrent resolution to end a war, it will never be challenged and then ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Congress retains the power to end a war only because they refuse to exercise that power. It should make you a little more sympathetic to members of Congress, because it's stacked against them. Wednesday's House resolution to end the war with Iran cannot pass in the Senate because Congress, both the House and the Senate, they want to keep this illusory power. They want to keep it around. Why? For window dressing. And never underestimate the power of window dressing. They need this false power for symbolism and a political cudgel. And never underestimate the power of symbolism and political cudgels, especially when you're trying to end an illegal war. Okay. What's going to happen now, what you're going to see, and you don't get angry about this. Don't get angry at Senate Minority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer. He is now going to use the vote in the House as a cudgel in the Senate to score political points, to portray Senate Republicans as terrified of Trump because they won't vote in favor of the House resolution to end the war. Now, this won't even pass the procedural hurdles to even get a vote in the Senate. John Thune is the majority leader. Chuck Schumer is the minority leader. They have a very cordial relationship, and they know they're institutionalists, and Schumer is going to say one thing, but when he's talking privately to John Thune, he's saying, yeah, we can't possibly, this cannot ever go up for a vote, because it would destroy the illusion that we have a war powers, that we have a way to end a war. At least through the War Powers Act, they don't. But the fact that the House of Representatives passed this resolution on Wednesday to end the war in Iran, huge in and of itself. It signals he called 4 Republicans guilty of treason. That vote signaled to the American people, the world, that this war is an unpopular failure. And it signaled, and this is why it's important, because this is how you end a war. It sent a signal to Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, there's no way Congress has the votes to approve that $200 billion Iran war supplemental that the Pentagon was about to ask for about 6 weeks ago. Now, they know this war, especially now with Wednesday's vote, the war is over. And Rubio said it. The war is over. Wednesday's vote was a thunderous signal to the White House and Iran. You're not going to get $200 billion. The United States isn't going to come up with $200 billion for Donald Trump's failed war with Iran. So symbolism, window dressing, political cudgels, that's how the institution works. And using this resolution that's really, that cannot be passed, Think of it as a procedural vote that tested the waters. And what you're about to start hearing over the weekend, what you're going to start reading, you're going to read articles and hear pundits and politicians and historians. They will begin to proclaim with great certitude the war with Iran is over and we lost. We're already beginning to hear that. But now, because of this war resolution on Wednesday, it is going to be axiomatic that we lost. Trump lost the war with Iran, and Trump has zero options when it comes to reopening Hormuz other than throwing himself at the mercy of the Ayatollah. You're going to hear that more and more, especially in the lead up to the midterms. You don't need an official act of Congress to end a war. You just need Congress to tell the commander-in-chief, we're not paying for it. Wednesday's vote in the House shifted the conversation away from Trump's and Hegseth's lies and bluster. We're this close to a deal with Iran, right? We wiped out 90% of Iran's missile capability. I would love a press pass. I would love to ask Pete Hegseth, if you've wiped out 90% of Iran's missile capability, their navy, you say, is at the bottom of the ocean, they have no military left, then why can't you seize the Strait of Hormuz, you piece of shit? You liar? That would be the question that should be asked. Why can't we take Hormuz? Why can't we take Karg Island? Well, Wednesday's vote is going to make it easier for the media to ask that question. It's going to make it easier for the right wing, especially MAGA Republicans who voted for Trump because he promised to end the forever wars, and so now they're turning on him. It's going to be much easier to say Trump's war with Iran is the greatest military blunder in American history. We have a president and a Republican Party incapable of even admitting there's a crisis of their own making. I don't want to play clips of Scott. I thought about playing clips of Marco Rubio and Scott Bessent, and it's not worth it. It's just infuriating to watch them unable to acknowledge the pain they've inflicted on the Iranian people, the Middle East, and here in America. Millions of people around the world are starving to death because 30% of the plant's fertilizer can't pass through the Strait of Hormuz. So I hope I explained a little bit of why that was important on Wednesday and why the Senate is not going to pass the war resolution. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. There's a lot going on, and if I don't do it now, I'm not going to be able. So I got to get through some more stuff here. I should be doing shorter shows. That would be the smart thing to do. Okay. Congress is prepping its budget for fiscal year 2027. Fiscal year 2027 begins on October 1st, 2026. Cabinet members are going before House and Senate appropriations committees this week to make their cases for which items should be cut or expanded. That's why you're seeing so many clips on the internet of Marco Rubio and Scott Bessent and Mark Wayne Mullen. You have cabinet heads going up before appropriations committees in Congress justifying their budget requests. So far, we've seen testimony from Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, Mark Wayne Mullen, Marco Rubio, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. These are budgetary hearings. But because Congress performs oversight, the questions this week veer into Iran, the Epstein files, Ebola, the $1.8 billion weaponization slush fund, because those are also budgetary items. Those are issues that affect the 2027 budget because budgets reflect priorities. On what does this government deem important enough to spend its money and time and money? For example, why, with so little money, is Todd Blanche, acting Attorney General, prosecuting E. Jean Carroll for allegedly perjuring herself during a 2022 deposition on the trial where she accused Donald Trump of raping and defaming her? There's only so much time and money we have in our budget. So Todd Blanche, acting Attorney General, has to answer those questions. Blanche told Congress this week that $1.8 billion weaponization slush fund is officially dead. He said the DOJ will abide by a recent court order blocking the fund and said there is no intention to appeal that ruling. Then he was asked for that in writing during testimony, and he wouldn't give it. He said, "No, I don't need to put it in writing. My sworn testimony should serve as enough of a promise that the Department of Justice will not create a fund, a reparations fund for January 6ers. Right, because you would never lie. Nobody in Trump's cabinet has ever lied under oath during congressional hearings. So Blanche saying he's not going to pursue the slush fund, it could serve as impetus to move the last piece of the 2026 budget to the finish line. The 2026 budget is not, most of it, all of it except funding for ICE and border security has been passed. But we still don't have a budget for ICE and border security because Democrats are pissed off, and rightfully so, about ICE and the for-profit detention industry. And Trump keeps attaching or wanting to attach amendments, spending bills to that last piece of funding for ICE and Border Patrol. He was hoping to attach his $1.8 billion weaponization fund to that appropriations bill. He's also thinking of attaching the $1 billion spending bill for his new ballroom to that. So that is one of the many reasons 2026 funding for ICE and Border Patrol isn't moving through Congress. During his testimony, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said the agreement he struck last month with private citizen Donald Trump to drop Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service, he said the agreement no longer includes a $1.8 billion slush fund. But Blanche said under oath that what is still in effect from that agreement would be the part of the deal to end all IRS audits currently being conducted on Donald Trump, his corporations, his family, and friends. And we don't really know how that deal will be applied inside the IRS. Scott Bessent refused to say, and he runs the IRS. That deal will save Trump at least $100 million in back taxes. He's been audited. It's so hard to audit him because he has thousands of shell companies. Reportedly, he owes at least $100 million for writing off losses on a Chicago skyscraper he never owned. So this is all going to be the subject of a June 12th hearing before the judge in the lawsuit that precipitated this settlement. Remember, in January, Trump sued the Internal Revenue Service. His Internal Revenue Service sued the Internal Revenue Service for $10 billion because during his first administration, the IRS leaked his tax returns. So he sued his IRS for $10 billion. His Justice Department defended went to court and then decided to settle out of court last month. So now the judge has reopened the case. She wants to see what's in the deal. And Todd Blanche, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, has to go before that judge to explain how he thinks it's possible for Donald Trump to sue his own IRS for $10 billion and have his own Justice Department defending his own IRS draw up a settlement with Trump's personal lawyers to end the lawsuit without the judge in that case approving it, especially since it's coming out of our taxes. This is not Todd Blanche going out of pocket. This is the American taxpayer. And a panel of retired judges demanded an investigation accusing both Todd Blanche and Donald Trump of fraud. Well, of course it's fraud. They concocted a phony lawsuit against the IRS in order to transfer money into Trump's pocket. $100 million that we know of. According to reports, he owes the Internal Revenue Service $100 million because he took a write-off on a Chicago skyscraper that he didn't. I mean, I got to respect that. He took a $100 million write-off on a skyscraper in Chicago that he didn't own. You got to respect that. Okay. By the way, we are coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. And I keep telling you that reporting on that immunity ruling is inaccurate. The Supreme Court did not rule an ex-president can't be indicted for crimes he commits in the Oval Office. It's simply not true. If it's not an official act, he can be indicted. That ruling did not grant Donald Trump blanket immunity. And I keep telling you, the only reason Trump isn't on trial for January 6th and the classified documents case is he won in 2024. So Jack Smith dissolved his lawsuits before Trump got sworn in and used his power as president to dissolve the lawsuits himself. I am telling you, Donald Trump is looking at criminal prosecution from a Democratic administration's attorney general if we somehow get Donald Trump out of the White House and elect a Democratic president. And you know who agrees with me? Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. He appeared on Sean Hannity's show on Tuesday, and Blanche said exactly what I said, and he's the only person other than I who's saying it. Blanche said had Trump not won the 2024 presidential election, he would most definitely be in prison right now. Blanche, who served as Trump's defense lawyer in that Manhattan criminal trial where Trump was found guilty 2 years ago, last month, May, 2 years ago, May of 2024, Trump was found guilty on 34 charges of hiding hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. He's a convicted felon because of this. And Todd Blanche told Sean Hannity that the judge in that case was hell-bent on locking Trump up and only changed his mind once Trump won in November. Okay, now that part isn't true. That part isn't true. Judge Juan Merchan, he presided over that criminal trial. Throughout that trial, he gave much latitude to Donald Trump. And he said, I have no intention of locking you up. And he had ample opportunities to lock Trump up throughout that entire trial. Anybody else would have been locked up for contempt of court. Trump disobeyed the judge's orders. He was constantly attacking the judge's daughter, the jury, the witnesses. The judge, Judge Juan Merchan, specifically said, I refuse to lock you up because you are a former and a possible future president. Trump's behavior was so egregious, anyone else would have spent the remainder of that trial behind bars. So Todd Blanche is still a liar. For him to say the only thing preventing that judge from locking Trump up after the guilty verdict was Trump winning, well, he wasn't going to lock him up either way, because Trump was never going to go to prison for the Manhattan criminal trial. It was a bunch of misdemeanors bundled into a felony or a couple of felonies. It was chicken shit. I mean, Alvin Bragg, Todd Blanche should have been able to win that. That's what a crappy lawyer he is. But Todd Blanche was saying, yeah, they would have locked him up, and the Supreme Court would not have stopped it because January 6th, inciting an insurrection, is not an official act as president. So Todd Blanche got one thing right, and that is Trump was going to prison if he didn't win in 2024, not because of Juan Merchan and the Manhattan criminal trial. He was going to prison for the classified documents. He was going to go to prison for January 6th and wire fraud for taking money from donors and paying Todd Blanche $10 million last year. Would you give money to Donald Trump? Ask a Trump supporter. Would you donate money to a billionaire for his legal fees? Trump and Todd Blanche know that if Trump agrees to leave in 2029, it all starts over again. It's going to start if a Democrat is elected president. But even if a Republican is elected president, a president cannot pardon an ex-president out of civil lawsuits or state and local. Well, Blanche came under heavy fire this week on Capitol Hill for his heavy redactions of the Epstein files, which some lawmakers said were aimed at protecting the accused and not the victims. Blanche was accused by several members of Congress of failing to investigate Donald Trump's role in the Epstein cover-up. And then it was time for Scott Bessent to talk about the Epstein files. He testified before the Senate Finance Committee on Wednesday. And Scott Bessent, I think Scott Bessent may be next on the chopping block. It was very it was very reminiscent of Pam Bondi's testimony before the House Judiciary Committee right before Trump fired her. He was working off the burn book. He was doing the whataboutisms. So Senator Elizabeth Warren asked Bessent about Donald Trump's investments in weapons manufacturing. I'll get to Epstein in a second. There was an exchange between Bessent and Ron Wyden that was just despicable. But Elizabeth Warren asked Scott Bessent about Donald Trump's investments in weapons manufacturers right before beginning his attacks on Iran. And all Scott Bessent could do was look inside his burn book and then suggest Congress has its own problems with lawmakers trading and selling on inside information. When Elizabeth Warren summarized Trump's thousands of trades this year, amounting to tens of millions of dollars profiting off war, all Bessent could say was members of Congress should get their own house in order. Members of Congress should not be trading stock. So this is contempt of Congress. It is contempt of congressional oversight. We saw it with Pam Bondi, and their rhetorical device is because of the deeply flawed politicians inside Congress, the legislative branch is not allowed to conduct its constitutionally prescribed responsibility to question how the Trump administration spends our government's time and money, and to question whether or not insider trading is taking place. Now, I'm not going to play the clips. I should wrap it up. There's so much to get to, and I just don't have time. Let me end with Scott Bessent. There's so much. I'm sorry. Scott Bessent is an openly gay man. And he's married to another man. They have children. But he carries water for a party overflowing with self-hating, closeted homosexuals and Christian nationalists like Tennessee Republican Andy Ogles, who forced to take down a tweet yesterday that read, "There is no room inside the Republican Party or America for homosexuals." The Washington Post reporting that Ogles is now insisting, "I didn't post the tweet. One of my staffers did." So Scott Bessent is messed up in the head, not because he's gay, but because he's a gay man surrounded by homophobes, and he tends to get violent. You might remember we talked about his shoving match with Elon Musk right outside Donald Trump's Oval Office early last year. Bessent walked up to Elon Musk after a meeting about tariffs. Bessent said, "You're a fraud. You don't know what you're talking about." And he struck a rugby pose, according to all reports, and just ran into Musk, and they began wrestling right outside Donald Trump's office. According to reports in Politico last September, Scott Bessent confronted Bill Pulte, our new director of national intelligence. He confronted Pulte inside an exclusive Washington, D.C. club that was hosting a dinner for Trump's top advisors. And after, I guess there were a couple of drinks, I would assume there were a couple of drinks, Bessent threatened to punch Pulte in the face for bad-mouthing him to Trump. Pulte at the time was director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Now he's also acting director of national intelligence. According to Politico, Pulte at this dinner walked up to Scott Bessent to make casual conversation, and Bessent laid into him with expletive-laced threats, saying, quote, and I'm not going to say the words, but you know what, he said, "Why the F are you talking to the president about me? F you, I'm going to punch you in your effing face." So in 1 year, Bessent got into it with Musk and got into it with Bill Pulte. At one point, according to Politico, Scott Bessent wanted to take it outside. During Bessent's testimony before the Senate, did you actually threaten to punch Bill Pulte in the face? And Bessent responded, "No, sir, I actually said I was going to kick his ass," unquote. And Tom Tillis said, "Good, I share the emotion." During his testimony before the House Foreign Affairs Committee on Wednesday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was asked by Massachusetts House Democrat Bill Keating about Bill Pulte's qualifications to serve as acting director of national intelligence. Keating asked Rubio, quote, "With all your intelligence committee experience and now as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, in all those years of experience, have you ever, specifically in the context of the intelligence community, heard the name Bill Pulte?" And Marco Rubio responded, "In the context of intelligence, no." Keating then spent the remainder of his time ranting and raving about Bill Pulte being the new acting director of national intelligence. Former Vice President Mike Pence said he's pretty sure the statute that created the job of director of national intelligence, he's pretty sure the statute mandates the position be held by someone with an extensive background in intelligence gathering, which Pence added Pulte clearly lacks. So that's, I'm going to wrap it up. I got Epstein stuff. I got so much more stuff. I'm getting really good at charting this stuff, but I want to bring the show in on time. So I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you enjoyed any of this, please share it. I need your help, please. Please like this episode. Please leave a comment. If I made any mistakes, please leave a comment. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the comments civil. I think that covers everything. Yeah, they're another platform. It's amazing, and this is why I don't curse on the show. I don't curse. One of the reasons I don't curse is I will not give anybody the opportunity to call me vulgar. If you're going to deplatform me or throttle me back, it's because of the ideas behind what I say, not how I say it. Because if you curse, if you're blasphemous, they can always use that as cover for the real reason they want to throttle you back. Doesn't surprise me what's going on. And yes, it makes me angry. Obviously, it makes me angry. Please support me. Thank you.